Here we are at example 2F from our 4.3, 4.4 set of notes. We're asked to factor the following. And in just looking at this, we notice all the coefficients, this trinomial, we do notice that all the coefficients are actually evenly divisible by 2. And so for step 1, we're going to pull out that greatest common factor. So again, they're all evenly divisible by 2, and so if we divide pretty much everything by 2, we end up then with x squared minus 4x plus 4. Alright. Now we end up with a trinomial, and we're going to try and break this down. So we still have our 2 out in front times, in parentheses, x times x gets us that x squared that we want. And what we're also trying to figure out is what two numbers multiply to give us 4 that add up to give us negative 4. So kind of just going back to that whole list. So 1 and 4 give us 4. Unfortunately, though, that's not going to combine in any way to give us 4, or in this case, negative 4. We also have 2 and 2. When we multiply 2 times 2, that will end up giving us 4, and it will also add or subtract and combine to give us negative 4. So we know then our numbers that we're talking about are this pair 2 and 2. And 2 and 2. Now, when we're talking about the signs, some of us are getting to the point where we're really good and we know the signs just by looking at the signs inside of here. But if you don't, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. Notice how this last one is a positive, and this middle one is a negative. Well, if all three were positive, we know that we would have a plus plus. Everything would have to be positive. However, since this middle term is negative and the final term is positive, two negatives, when multiplied together, will end up becoming a positive. You know, when we do the last two numbers being multiplied together, you end up with a positive number. Because negative 2 times negative 2, positive 4. Also, when you combine those two, so for example, the negative 2x and the other negative 2x, you will end up with a grand total of negative 4x. And as a result, this would now be our factored form with the correct signs. Now, again, rewriting that, just to kind of get into a form that may be easier for later on in solving, we would end up with that 2 out in front times x minus 2, really times itself is the same thing as saying x minus 2 squared. So this should be our final factored form. It's not the end of the world if you show this one, but really this is kind of the key final that we're hoping for. Again, though, that is example 2F from our 4.3, 4.4 set of notes.